Recently, whenever I finished a video about a keyboard, I couldn't wait to return to my home base, which has found itself to be the unicorn that I covered a little while ago. I am truly smitten by it, and the whole ergo space in general, although I haven't found myself digging deeper into the customization aspects as much as I'd hoped, mostly due to a lack of time. Yet sometimes I still yearn for the typing feel that my heavier, single-bodied units offered. Which is why the QK Alice Duo caught my attention. Could this be the holy grail? Combining the split experience with the premium custom keyboard feel that I've been longing for? No, but let me explain. Before we get started, let's lay some ground rules and how this video is set, or should I say, split up. I will start as per usual with a hardware overview, looking at every aspect of this rather interesting design, and oh boy does it hold more than one trick up its sleeve. Then take it apart, see what makes it tick before talking about the layout and why I think it could be the perfect gateway drug into split keyboards, but unfortunately isn't something for everyone. I will, however, refrain from talking about the ergonomics, or to be more precise, the alleged benefits of it. After my video on the unicorn, I noticed a bit of a discourse in the comments, and I've since been feeling a bit conflicted about it. I love split keyboards. I believe my hands and wrists feel better when using these, but whether it actually is better or just a placebo caused by what everyone else is saying, I cannot say. I am definitely not an authority on health-related topics, even though I do eat a banana every day. What I will do, however, is what I always do. I'll report on my findings after having used this board for just about 3 weeks as my daily driver. With that being said, if you're still interested, come along on this banana boat ride through the Valley of Splits. It's a bit odd starting off the hardware overview with the case it's shipped with, but I cannot find myself to ignore the size of this thing. It's such a beast that it won't fit into any of my backpacks, but on the other hand, it protects the goods inside, which are valued at least at $289. Qwertykeys, the maker of this keyboard, is no stranger to this either, as I believe they most often, maybe always, ship a case with their boards, which I very much appreciate. Opening the sarcophagus presents us with the board in its full glory, split apart like a broken relic. The name Alice Duo stems from the equally named Alice layout, a single-bodied design often seen in the custom scene with a dedicated following. These types of keyboards all have a noticeable split in the middle, with a portion of the keys facing away from the center for a more natural typing position. I even own 2 of this type, my first ever custom, the Meridian from Prime Keyboards, and the Spring from OLAP, with the latter having a slightly more aggressive angle. The Duo retains everything a normal Alice would, but goes one step further and literally splits in half, hence the name Alice Duo. But that's not where it ends. The split nature also allows the Duo to be individually tented, which refers to the centers of the halves being angled upwards for a more natural typing experience. You'll often find this or a similar feature on split keyboards. Take my beloved Unicorn again, which has these tending poles that you can attach to it to achieve the same result. However, with the Duo, you technically have the ability to adjust it to exactly the height that you want. Officially, Qwertykeys only lists 0 and 5 degrees as available options, but I found it to stay just as secure in between. But there's no notch or other indicators, so you might have to fiddle around a bit to get it to the elevation that you want. Which is where this thing might come in handy. It's meant as a support element to help you leverage your strength during adjustment. The halves combined offer all the keys of a 65% keyboard, meaning no functions row or numbers pad, but still includes a few modifiers on the left side. I believe most Alice keyboards come in this size, but there are of course bigger and smaller ones as well. Another aspect of Alice boards is the angled break at around the halfway point. The angle can differ between models and usually opens up a sinkhole that lets you peek down into the abyss. But Qwertykeys took the chance and filled it up with little RGB X heads instead. As an avid RGB avoider, I think they could have X'd this. But I suppose it ends up looking a little more refined than without them, and although my usual behavior is to avoid lights at all costs, I must admit the bright red fangs look quite menacing, aka cool. Don't grab the garlic just yet though, you can of course turn them off with the big red panic buttons that either side possesses. At first I thought this was a pairing button for the very nice wireless functionality, which we'll get into in a minute. But it actually cycled through the lights, a little slow for my taste, but it can also be easily remapped to anything else, just like any other key. Pretty cool. On the far left below the modifiers, we also find a replaceable badge featuring the Duo's smiling logo in blue. I'm not entirely sure this color matches the anodized silver that well, but this is of course a matter of personal taste. Among friends, I'm famously known to have no taste, and I agree, especially when looking at my friends. Luckily though, there are a lot of other color options available too, a total of 10 to be precise, so there's bound to be one up your alley, hopefully. If we flip the board around, we can take a look at one of the most intricately crafted customs I had ever laid my eyes on. Let's start off by the mirror, which is framed by the base. It is magnetically attached and covers the 6.66 watt-hour battery. Devilish. We will take this apart further in a second. Before that, let's finish up the surface dweller tour. If we continue to look at the bottom, we can spot the second shout out to the color blue apart from the badge. Inside of it is a slightly transparent plastic piece enclosing the wireless antenna and leading to the magnetic connector at the back that attaches to the mandatory base unit. This little gadget contains the same magnetic ports on either side, but also a more common USB-C at the back that finally goes into your computer of choice. It also contains a knob that, by default, acts as a volume and mute switch, but can also be changed to whatever you want. But there is more. Glancing inside, we see the inner workings as well as a few nifty indicators telling us the current battery state of each half, as well as whether the board is running in Windows or Mac mode. This is all fine and dandy, but I fear for the day when I lose or somehow misplace or even forget to take one of the proprietary cables with me. Which is likelier than you might think because the battery indicator is a bit misleading. It still showed 5 out of 5 green bars, even after about 2 weeks of use. Then for the first time it dropped 1 bar, then 1 more, until the left unit eventually died about 3 days later. This is because I use the left side more frequently, especially during video editing. But that's besides the point. The problem is that the indicator didn't show a more granular and, more importantly, accurate discharge over time. This can also be observed when you charge it. Take this scenario here. The left side is fully discharged, and after plugging it in for just a few seconds, it shows 4 out of 5 bars again. When I then disconnect the cable, the board stays at 4 out of 5. However, no matter how you look at it, it's unlikely that this charged to 80% in just a few seconds. What is more likely is that the indicator is not reading the charge properly. The point I'm trying to make is, don't put all of your trust into this. Better charge it when it hits the 3 yellow bars. You of course could also run the board permanently tethered, but I think that's quite a messy look. If you do this though, you can fully turn it off via the switches that can be found right next to the spacebar on either side. I stayed on the wireless train though and hit the entire base unit for a cleaner look, even though it contains a light strip, and I'm a sucker for those. Hiding it didn't cause any issues though, as it is running on a trusty 2.4 GHz wireless connection. But the best part about all of this is that you can fully configure your board while it is in its wireless state, which I found absolutely amazing. I think this is a first, and I'm all here for it. Normally you have to plug the board back in order to make any changes. Not here, and from here on out, I want this on all of my wireless boards. Not part of the base package, but a $45 add-on is the optional wrist rest, or wrist rest, as we're dealing with 2 units as well. This too, just like the board itself, can be height adjusted by opening it up and placing a little support piece underneath it. This time though, definitely only between 0 and 5 degrees. I don't know whether it's because this is a prototype unit or something else, but I don't feel like this is as well designed as the rest of the board. Don't get me wrong, it works great, fantastic even, but it feels a bit DIY-ish, if I may say so. There are also some finishing blemishes, however Qwertykeys assured me that these are only present on these prototype units, so this comment can be disregarded. But enough about this. Let's start dissecting the duo down to the core. As it is with many customs, this board too came in parts that I had to assemble first, but let's take a reverse approach here and take it apart instead. The keycaps have to go first, which are the PBD Fans Courage Reds, by the way, a nice set I acquired just for the duo, although I'm not sure I made the right choice, to be honest. It does match the red accents nicely, but the blue is challenging my sense of serenity. But once they are gone, we are presented with the only 4 hex screws that need to be removed in order to go topless. Taking a look at the upper shell shows us the hidden silicone grommet that offers our RGB button its bounce back feature. I tried to remove it, but it was secured so stubbornly that I stopped halfway through out of fear of breaking it. There's also a small marking in the center letting us know which side we are working with, making future reassemblies just a little easier. The rest is nicely machined and looks as well as it feels. There's a slight cut surrounding it, making it almost seem as if it was made out of 2 pieces, but it is in fact just 1. Let's move on to the bottom, which is where things get interesting. Sitting on top is the PCB sandwich, which to my surprise was magnetically attached via the same connector we found earlier on the back of the board as well as on the base unit. This is really cool and makes modifications super easy as there's no need to untangle or disconnect any frail little ribbon cables. The first element of the PCB sandwich is the plate, of which there are 3 options to choose from: an aluminium one, a PC one, and an FR4 version, which I unfortunately don't have. I will include a sound demo of the former two though, in just a minute. Then there's the PCB, which contains 2 layers of optional foam. Here too you can choose between a 1.2mm flex cut version and a 1.4mm non-flex cut variant. But there are even more customization options, such as the 2 gasket types the Duo ships with. One with a larger surface area for a stiffer feel and one with tiny little nips or nipples? Oh yeah, anyway, in my more springy days I used to be all about that bounce, but as I've gotten older I somehow gravitate more towards a harder surface area. Maybe not as unresponsive as my Unicorn, which offers no bounce at all and also sounds a bit too clacky in my opinion. On the Duo, however, I found the combination of the aluminum plate, the harder gaskets and the mode obscura switches to be a really nice fit. It ended up feeling exactly how I like it. But regardless of which option you choose, you cannot deny the intricate machining on both, the little silicon pieces and the form they go into. Speaking of that, let's continue our investigation further and remove the 2 layers of case foam and the insulating plastic sheet beneath it. Down here we get a clear look at the magnetic connector as well as the brass weight and a scary amount of screws, so let's get to it. The 4 Phillips heads on the outer side hold the bottom stand in place, which reveal a foam and rubber gasket equipped piece. It's pretty cool being able to take a look at the stand by itself, but let's not get too distracted and go back to the base, where we can remove a further 2 screws on the right. This will uncover the first hinge, which reveals yet again another 4 screws, which, you guessed it, we remove as well before we can finally take a look at it. The hinges are impressively tough to move around on their own, which is a good thing considering that they have to support all the heavy attack during a typing frenzy. They can, however, not be adjusted or retightened. I don't think this is of any concern though, as long as you don't constantly fidget around with them. Let's return to the remaining parts. It's time to get rid of the final hex screws, after which we can lift the surprisingly light aluminum frame from its weight. I only noticed this now, but there are small plastic pieces glued to the top of each of the connecting points where the bottom meets the top half, probably to help out with the acoustics. Going ever smaller, we now have the remaining weight along with the daughter board, which is attached surprisingly loosely, probably to ensure it has some wiggle room to move around and therefore be able to better connect to the incoming PCB. There are a further 2 hex screws present here, but before we can rip everything apart, the little cable must be removed first as it is attached to the battery and will leave together with the weight. Let's take a look at said battery, which is held in place by a plastic guard that is attached by another 2 screws. Quite honestly, this has to be the most screw-loading keyboard of all time, but on the other hand, I welcome this approach as the battery is not glued in and easily replaceable. Finally, the last part, which is another miniature diorama filled with an antenna cable reaching for the back, explaining the presence of plastic, as well as a bent over ribbon cable responsible for the flex and bounce of the previously mentioned connector. What an insane amount of parts, and mostly screws this was, but I must admit the construction is impressive and there must have been a lot of thought and engineering that went into this. Fun fact, the chip we found down here has a Bluetooth logo on it, but this is unfortunately not activated and you are restricted to the 2.4 GHz connection with the base unit. Well, that was quite a lot. Time to put all of these pieces back together and see what these doodads are able to accomplish. When I first saw the Duo, I got really excited. It seemed like the combo I wished for, but upon using it for the first time, it quickly derailed and I ended up in a ditch. Now, this isn't the Duo's fault, this is entirely because of me and the messy wiring inside of my brain. To explain, I have to give a bit of context, so please indulge me for a little longer, it'll all make sense, I promise. At the end of last year, I jumped ship and gave split ergonomic keyboards a try, namely the Board Source Unicorn. I'm pretty sure I never mentioned this until now. Anyway, the early beginnings of that journey were quite slow and sometimes even painful. One primary issue I had was that whenever I switched back to a non-split and column staggered keyboard, my brain would overload and crash. But at some point my memory started to associate the split keyboard with the column staggered layout and everything else with regular staggered keys. Which was a prophecy foretold in the comments on my Unicorn video. Well, almost. But because of this, my brain desperately wanted the Duo to behave like the Unicorn, screaming inside the hollow chambers, "This is a split, why does it not behave like a split?" And that's ultimately the reason for my rather split feelings about the Duo. I wish it was more than just an Alice split in half. Now granted, not all splits are ortholinear or column staggered, and I'm definitely not an authority on keyboards like this with only having owned two, this included. But still, I wish the Duo leaned more into what, in my opinion, makes these boards so interesting and fun to try out, because they are so different. It's not just oddities though, I have long become a fan of the thumb cluster. The extra buttons on the corn are to die for, which is why I actually changed the right spacebar on the Duo to be an enter key and the alt right next to it a layer trigger. This doesn't give me all the power, but still more than a standard keyboard would, so there are some advantages you can still get if you're willing to get a little weird with the config. Now, I totally understand why Qwertykeys took this approach. I believe many, including myself, prior to my own experiences, are quite scared of a non-standard layout, such as ortholinear or column stagger. And splits are already a niche within a niche, so to make this appeal to the widest audience possible, you have to offer some familiarity. But it's not just a standard keyboard split in half. In the Duo's defense, if this was my first split, I would have absolutely loved it. It's wonderfully machined and has beautiful details while featuring by far the best wireless implementation I experienced up until now. But most importantly to me, it feels and sounds great while typing. Price-wise, it sits on the higher end when it comes to both split and regular keyboards. For comparison, my Unicorn without the keycaps and switches was almost the same at around $285. Yes, there are far more expensive boards out there, but in today's market there's also a vast selection of budget boards with an amazing feature set, especially from Qwertykeys. In my opinion, the Duo is everything I would want a custom keyboard to be, with the split element on top of it. I just hope next time they decide to go even further off the beaten path. But what are your thoughts on the Duo? Split revolution or just split Alice? Let me know down in the comments below. For full transparency, Qwertykeys did send me the Duo along with the wrist rest, but apart from answering some of my questions, they had no input on this video nor saw it in advance. As always, thanks for watching and thanks for sticking around till the end. Next time, it's back to gaming PCs, we're not done with that topic just yet. Anyway, have a great early spring and see you again in the next one. Bye!